The peaceful suburban streets were bathed in warm amber and gold hues as the afternoon sun hung low in the sky. With her tiny knapsack bouncing softly on her shoulder, 13-year-old Zoey Klein strode home. Her thoughts were racing, including unfinished homework, a humorous joke she had overheard at school, and the plan she was secretly looking forward to for the weekend. The world appeared straightforward for a while, full of laughing, the scent of fall foliage, and the distant chatter of the neighborhood. Will, Zoey's younger brother, was sitting on the porch laughing as he threw and caught a ball, his laughter resonating in the cool air. "Zoey, hurry up!" With a voice that was both excited and impatient, he yelled. Zoey waved back, smiled, and rearranged her backpack. Through the open windows she could smell the aroma of sugar and cinnamon as she heard the gentle music coming from the kitchen, where her mother, Jennifer Arnold, was humming as she prepared a sweet treat. Her dad, Bill Klein, was in the backyard working in the flower beds, his hands in the dirt, a small smile on his face as he inspected the colorful flowers. It was a serene, everyday, and reassuringly flawless world. With her shoes crunching softly on the fallen autumn leaves, Zoey went out onto the street. She had a tiny thrill of independence as a soft breeze brushed her hair. Despite her affection for this route, which she had traveled on innumerable times, she felt uneasy about something in her heart today. Nevertheless, her voice carried faintly in the late afternoon light, as she chuckled quietly at Will's light-hearted taunting. Her attention was briefly diverted by a notice on her phone, as she approached the bend in the road. That 1 second was sufficient. Zoey's tiny hands tightened their hold on the steering wheel, but it was too late. The vehicle veered. The tires made a squealing sound on the asphalt. The world whirled in a haze of concrete, sunlight, and orange foliage. The air was filled with the piercing, terrifying sound of metal crunching against the roadside barrier. Time slowed. Zoey's heart pounded and her eyes grew wide. The golden sunshine, her family's laughing, and the well-known streets all appeared to bleed into an agonizingly silent eternity. The car toppled and slid after colliding with the road's edge. After the collision, all she had known, the comfort of home, her brother's laughing and her mother's soft voice, was abruptly replaced by turmoil, panic, and a deafening stillness. A nearby bystander, their face white with horror, rushed to the scene. The automobile lay crumpled, its motor now silent, the golden sunlight streaming across broken glass and twisted metal as they dialed desperate numbers to call for rescue. Inside, Zoey lay, her tiny frame quivering, her breathing labored. The world she had known only a few seconds before seemed far away, brittle, and vanishing like sand between her fingers. The emergency personnel showed up in a matter of minutes. The anxious reds and blues of the flashing lights filled the area. Zoey's body seemed delicate, almost ethereal in its frailty, as she was gingerly pulled from the wreck. Each motion was purposeful, a meticulous balancing act between life and death. In a haze of hurry, hope, and fear, the ambulance doors closed, sirens sounded, and the trip to the hospital started. Jennifer Arnold was kneading dough in the kitchen at home, when she suddenly felt an unexplained panic attack. There was a problem. An uneven, mounting worry took the place of the joyful hum on her lips. In the backyard, Bill Klein froze in the middle of his stride, feeling the serene afternoon break apart. As Will yelled for Zoey, his voice shaking with confusion, his ball rolled undetected to the edge of the porch. The world changed, the commonplace turning into something unfathomable. Doctors at the hospital responded swiftly, a mix of seriousness and resolve on their features. When Jennifer and Bill came, their hands were clasped together, and their faces were filled with anxiety. Will clutched to his mother, tears running down his cheeks, small and frail in the face of great grief. The entire globe held its breath. Then the words came out with a silent, unachievable finality. "We took every possible action. She failed to show up." The room was shattered by the weight of those words, and the air was thick with grief. Time broke. Unbidden and unpleasant memories of Zoey's laughing, the way she had tilted her head when inquiring, her boundless energy, and the soft mischief in her eyes all suddenly surfaced. A hollow aching settled in Jennifer Arnold's chest as she felt the earth wobble beneath her feet. Normally calm and steady, Bill Klein's face was marred by sadness, and his hands were shaking as he clutched his wife. Too little to comprehend completely, Will wailed into his mother's arms, his tiny body trembling with sorrow. They had been struck by the unexpected, relentless, and total storm of loss. The day that had started with joy and golden sunlight came to a close with a terrible silence that felt almost tangible, as if an invisible weight were bearing down on the family. There was a gap left by Zoey Klein's absence. Where happiness, mischief, and love had previously been, there were now only remnants of what had been. However, even in that gloomy period, the tiniest hints of love, recollections of tender touches, laughter, and the unwavering ties of family, remained brittle but resilient, as though to suggest that there was light even in the midst of the storm. The siren, a melancholy sound that seemed to convey the hope and terror of every heart it passed, wailed into the waning sunshine as the ambulance doors slammed shut with a metallic echo. Under the bright hospital lights, Zoey Klein lay within, her small, frail body pale and still, the slightest rise of her chest scarcely perceptible. The world she had known, including her brother's laughter, her mother's baking aroma, and the sunlight coming in through her bedroom window, had vanished, slipping through her fingers like water. Bill Klein and Jennifer Arnold arrived to the hospital nearly at the same time, their steps sped up yet laden with fear. Jennifer's mind was racing with prayers, desperate ideas, and desperate hope as she gripped her purse like a lifeline. Bill's face was tense, his jaw was set, and his eyes were looking everywhere for any indication that Zoey was still alive. The emergency room's stark white walls were in stark contrast to the cozy home they had left behind, serving as a reminder that while their world had utterly broken down, the outside world went on. Little and shaky, Will Klein trailed behind, holding his mother's hand in the desperate grasp of a youngster, who knew deep down that something horrible had happened. His wide eyes raced around the hallway, absorbing the sights and sounds of the machines with blinking lights, the strangers in white coats, and the chilly shadow of the antiseptic odor. With the weight of imminent grief bearing down on him with suffocating intensity, each stride felt heavier than the one before. Physicians and nurses worked quickly within the trauma room, their movements accurate, effective, and nearly robotic. They worked non-stop, using gestures, nods, and the rare snippet of speech to convey their intense but subdued voices. Bill and Jennifer were led to a waiting room, their hands gripped together as though clinging to one another would help them stay afloat as the panic surged. Will sobbed uncontrollably as he cuddled against his mother's side, his little shoulders trembling. Every second seemed to suck them farther into fear, hope, and anxiety as time seemed to bend and stretch. Hours seemed to stretch into minutes. A constant symphony of fear was created by the beeping of monitors, the low hum of medical machinery, and the scent of antiseptic. Jennifer repeatedly whispered her daughter's name, each time serving as a lifeline and a tenuous link between hope and despair. Normally calm and unflinching, Bill's eyes welled up with tears that he would not let fall in front of the medical professionals. He felt the unfathomable weight of powerlessness bearing down on him as he tightened his hands and tensed his jaw. And lastly, the moment that would permanently etch itself into their hearts. The doctor came over, his eyes burdened with the weight of the news he was bearing, his face sad. Bill's and Jennifer's fists automatically clenched, preparing them for whatever lay next. He whispered, "I'm so sorry," in a cautious, kind yet firm voice. "We took every possible action. Zoey didn't show up." The remarks shattered the brittle semblance of peace that had pervaded their lives only hours before, like a hammer. Jennifer's hand shook and rushed to her face as a sob ripped from her chest, filling the room with a sound of agony. With his head in his hands and a deep guttural anguish radiating from the very center of his existence, Bill slumped onto a chair. The unexpected emptiness that replaced the comfort of his sister's presence rocked Will to his knees as he sank on his mother, his tiny body stricken with sadness. Unaware of the maelstrom that had overtaken the Klein family, the world outside the hospital carried on as usual. Time seemed to stop inside those confines, though, and every heartbeat was a heartbreaking reminder of what had been and would never be. Their hearts were cruelly precisely stabbed by the uncontrollably flowing memories of Zoey. Her laughter, her tiny hands gripping toys, the way she bounced on the balls of her feet when happy, and the tilt of her head when inquiring. As though the air itself had been stolen, Jennifer felt a hollowness descend into her chest, leaving behind nothing but the searing pain of loss. Now red and unblinking, Bill's eyes looked for a cause, a miracle, or anything that may reverse the recent events. Small but intense, Will's tears continued to reverberate off the sterile walls, his sadness unbridled and unadulterated. The world outside the room was blissfully oblivious to the family's devastating reality. However, on the inside, each heartbeat, breath, and tear became a memorial to love lost, and the unexpected, unfathomable loss of the vibrant, brilliant spirit that had been Zoey Klein. The harsh, heartless lights of the hospital not only highlighted her absence but also the irrevocable change in life, leaving a gaping hole that would never be filled. Some memories, like her laughing in the backyard, the soft hum of her voice as she assisted her mother, or the playful sparkle in her eyes when she teased her brother, clung firmly even in that oppressive darkness. These tiny, transient, and delicate sparks of light hinted that even though Zoey was no longer with us physically, her spirit, her love, joy, and laughter would endure as a reassuring but eerie presence that would always be a part of the family she had left behind. Hours went by, yet they seemed like centuries. Together, Jennifer, Bill, and Will sat and held one another as the silent burden of sadness enveloped them like an implacable veil. Memories clashed with reality, tears streamed freely, and the intolerable truth accompanied them. Yes, they were broken, but they were together. And in that unity, even in the face of unfathomable suffering, the first shaky threads of fortitude, love, and memory started to emerge. Sunlight, laughter, and the ease of everyday life had greeted the day, but it ended in a profound silence that was almost tangible, pressing against their hearts and demanding that they face the world anew, forever changed, forever grieving, but still united by a love that even death could not take away. The perfume of fall leaves and the subtle aroma of Jennifer's baked goods, which were now untouched and cooling on the counter, were the only reminders of normalcy that seemed so far away as the Klein house stood peacefully in the gentle evening light. Children were playing, leaves were swirling, and the distant buzz of traffic continued as if nothing had happened. On the inside, however, there was a palpable void that weighed down every breath and every heartbeat. Jennifer Arnold was the first to enter the house, her hands shaking as she gripped the medical bag she hadn't yet set down. It felt like she was wandering through a dream that she hoped would end with each step across the well-known floors. Zoey's schoolbooks were still neatly packed by the sofa, her shoes were by the entrance, and the notebook she had brought with her today was leaning against the wall when she glanced around the living room. Every item served as a silent reminder of a life that had died suddenly. They were tiny, personal reminders of a child's existence that had been frozen in time. Bill Klein trailed behind, more slowly and methodically. His gaze lingered on the places Zoey had occupied, the window sill she frequently sat on to observe the garden, the corner of the couch she preferred, the tiny chair at the kitchen table that was now achingly vacant. He traced the contours of the cushions that previously held the warmth of Zoey's presence, as he stroked his fingers over the back of the sofa. Without her laughter filling the halls and her tiny footsteps piercing the cadence of everyday existence, the house seemed vast, even colossal. Will Klein followed, suddenly quiet, the tears he had shed turning to a surprised, hollow silence. As though physical contact could bind Zoey to him again, he gently ran his hands over her books, grazing her doodles and scrawled homework. In a vain attempt to call her out of the emptiness, his tiny, almost discernible voice repeatedly whispered her name. Memories reverberated throughout the house. Meals together, heated disputes, the commotion of early mornings as the family hurried through breakfast, and the sensitive, gentle moments that had been commonplace but now felt sacred. As sobs rocked her body, Jennifer collapsed onto the couch and held a pillow to her chest. Bill knelt next to her, one arm wrapped across her shoulders and the other on his own knee. His jaw was clenched, his eyes focused on a faraway spot in the room, and his mind was rehearsing the events of the day with unrelenting vigor. The indescribable reality of Zoey's absence contrasted with every memory of her voice, her laughing, and her cheeky smile. The warmth of Will's presence was a tenuous link to reality as he pressed near, his petite figure tucking into the gap between them. As though frozen by fear of upsetting her absence, they walked carefully through the house. When they eventually entered Zoey's room, it felt like a time capsule of her life. A pile of books near the bed, posters on the walls, her coursework neatly fastened, and little mementos gathered over the years, all of them unopened. Dust particles swirled like tiny memories in the air as the sunshine crept through the curtains. Jennifer's hand hovered over Zoey's desk, running fingers over her pencils and following the edges of her notebooks. Every item served as a reminder, a silent story of a child's aspirations, desires, and the seemingly ordinary events that suddenly had an intolerable meaning. Slowly, Bill unlocked her closet, exposing clothes that were neatly hung, sweaters and jackets. The fabric was warm and smooth with little traces of Zoey, and his palm brushed against one, softly dragging it out. He took a strong breath, a sharp breath that was full with sorrow and memory. Will's eyes were full of emotions as he picked up a small plush animal off the floor and held it to his chest. Once a sanctuary of youthful vitality, the chamber now bore the weight of absence, a silent temple of recollections. They went through the rooms for hours, talking nothing and thinking about the past and the future. Every now and then, Jennifer would whisper Zoey's name while narrating little details about her, such how she enjoyed painting, how she organized her books neatly, and how she tormented Will in a playful way. Bill recalled the peaceful evenings when Zoey had sat next to him in the garden, her bright mind soaking up the surroundings as she asked questions about flowers and soil. Will recalled the games they had played, the minor disagreements, and the seemingly never-ending laughing. Nevertheless, amidst the sorrow, minuscule glimmerings of affection emerged. They talked about Zoey's everyday activities, her little triumphs, and the jokes she had muttered to herself. The home gradually and initially silently started to seem alive again, not because of her, but because of the reverberation of love and the links that death could not break. Jennifer created a tiny shrine of remembering in Zoey's room by arranging her favorite drawings and a few treasured items. With their vibrant hues contrasting with the gentle sunlight, Bill arranged flowers from the garden next to her bed. Will carefully smoothed the covers of Zoey's favorite books before placing them on the desk. Every small act of care was a silent protest against the finality of loss, a statement that even though Zoey was no longer with them, their love for her remained unwavering. There was silence as nightfall descended on the house. Holding on to one another, the family sat in the living room. Even though the pain was still quite heavy, it seemed a little less overwhelming when shared. Fragile but reassuring, the faint glow of lamps filled the rooms as the shadows stretched across the floorboards. Though they didn't say much, their quiet was not meaningless. It was filled with love, memory, and the first shaky hints of recovery. The Klein family started to realize that love was not destroyed by grief, even in the face of unimaginable loss. It molded it into a silent, resilient fire that would illuminate their path. They had the brief impression that Zoey's soul was still with them on that first night back home, surrounded by the quiet presence of memories, watching over them, guiding them, and whispering that love never dies. Weeks passed, and the once silent house started to vibrate with the soft rhythms of daily life. It was a slower, more intentional rhythm, one influenced by loss, memory, and the brittle glimmer of hope, instead of the same vitality and the carefree laughing that had once filled the corridors. Will Klein came back to school with a fresh perspective on how fleeting life is. Even though he spoke more slowly and took more deliberate steps, Zoey's influence was evident in everything he did. He found himself telling his buddies stories about his sister in class, about her witty antics, her ingenious ideas, and the insatiable curiosity that had characterized her. Every memory he uttered out loud was a salve and a wound, relieving his grief while maintaining the sting of loss fresh and real. Jennifer Arnold found tiny ways to pay tribute to Zoey's memory, while immersing herself in her profession and community. Under the kind guise of Zoey's name, she raised money for children's activities, volunteered at schools, and assisted in planning neighborhood events. Every deed of service was an homage, a means of transforming her sorrow into something material, something that might support life and make people happy, just as Zoey had previously made their family happy. Bill Klein worked long hours in the garden, caring for Zoey's remembrance garden as addition to the flowers. He planted flowers that she had adored, arranging them with care so that the hues spoke of hope, life, and remembering. Invoking Zoey's name in a whisper, he watered the plants carefully each morning. It turned into a rite, a holy act that linked the past to the present, loss to love, and remembrance to absence. To respect her spirit, the family established little rituals at home. Every evening, they would get together in Zoey's room to share stories and chuckle quietly at memories that helped them to cope with the pain in their hearts. They left room on her desk for letters and fresh flowers, and they framed her drawings on the walls. Occasionally, Will would compose brief messages to his sister, neatly fold them, and lay them on her bed. As a monument to a love that was unbounded by mortality, Jennifer and Bill would read them in silence while crying. Support was provided by friends and neighbors, whose presence served as a kind reminder that human connection might lessen the burden of grief, even in the face of catastrophe. Small private gestures inside the family, such as a handshake, a gaze, or a silent memory, were what started to put their lives back together. They discovered how to handle mornings without Zoey's laughter, evenings without her, and seemingly insignificant moments that now had deep emotional meaning. The Klein family started to derive significance from the customs they had established as the months went by, as though nature itself wanted to pay tribute to the girl who had once traveled the world so brilliantly. The memory garden flourished into a colorful sanctuary that attracted butterflies and birds. Jennifer would sit there with Will and tell him about Zoey's curiosity, generosity, and the small moments of humor that had made her so special. With his hands on his wife's shoulder and his gaze sweeping the flowers with a silent awe, Bill would join them. The garden evolved from a mere area to a living representation of love, resiliency, and Zoey's spirit's unwavering presence. They realized that healing was neither a straight line nor the total elimination of sorrow. It moved slowly, was clumsy, and was interspersed with unexpected bursts of happiness and sadness. Every day was an advancement, and every memory served as a link between the past and the present. They laughed once again, hesitantly at times, freely at others, and with every laugh came the echo of Zoey's impact, her happiness lingering like the sun after a storm. Her life was celebrated in unique ways by the family. Birthdays, academic successes, and minor domestic triumphs all served as occasions to commemorate, recall, and incorporate Zoey's legacy into their life's narrative. They also learned an important lesson from these deeds. Love endures beyond death. It changes, it endures, and it leads those who are left behind to connection, light, and hope. The Klein house was filled with long, soft shadows as the first rays of dawn flowed through the windows, painting the walls a golden gold. The brisk air carried the subtle aroma of fall foliage from the garden below, which was now a riot of color, the memory garden Bill had so lovingly cultivated. Even in their delicate movement, the flowers seemed to hum with the soul of the girl they honored, as they swayed gently in the air, their petals gleaming with dew. With her hands folded in her lap and her eyes streaming with tears but soothed by a tenuous calm, Jennifer Arnold sat silently on the little bench in the memory garden. With a little notepad in his hand, Will knelt next to her, running his fingertips over designs and notes Zoey had previously created. Bill was a silent source of strength, standing behind them with his hands on their shoulders. For the first time in weeks, there was merely a profound, lasting presence, the silent solace of family members supporting one another, rather than a mad dash or excruciating pain. Subtle activity filled the morning. Butterflies made languid arcs above the flowers, birds flitted between the trees, and the quiet sound of the wind rustling through the branches produced a reassuring melody. It seemed as though Zoey herself was present in every tiny sound and light burst in the silence, her essence interwoven with their very existence. Jennifer uttered her daughter's name in a quiet voice that sounded like a prayer. Her voice was firm now, but it still carried the weight of the anguish that had defined these months as she replied, "We miss you, Zoey." Will opened his notebook to reveal a sketch he had done of Zoey grinning in the sunlight, with a rainbow arcing across her petite frame. He whispered, "Look, Mom, I drew her just like she would want us to." Leaning forward, Bill brushed a strand of hair away from Jennifer's face. He responded calmly but firmly, "She's still with us. She is present in every blossom, every giggle, and every memory. We always carry her." The family listened to the soft rhythm of life around them while sitting in friendly silence. Once a place of mourning, the memory garden has transformed into a haven where love and loss coexist, and where hope and sadness are entwined. A living monument to fortitude, remembering, and the eternal power of love was created by the vivid blossoms, the gentle rustle of leaves, and the gentle sunlight. The Klein family strolled through their house with a renewed sense of purpose as the day went on. Once unremarkable, small rituals now have deep meaning. Sharing a story about Zoey's mischievous antics, having breakfast at the table, or spending some quiet time caring for the flowers together. Every action and gesture served as a memorial and a salve, strengthening the bonds of family, while also paying respect to the remaining absents. Home evenings turned into hallowed gathering places. They lighted candles in Zoey's honor, shared tales of her time in school, shed a few tears over the emptiness her absence left, and chuckled quietly at memories that still warmed their hearts. They learned that love, unwavering and unbroken, was the thread that held them to life and to each other, and that pain, despite being persistent, could coexist alongside happy moments. With Zoey's memories in tow, the Klein family gradually started to travel and engage with the outside world once more. In Zoey's honor, Jennifer launched a modest community project that supports kids' artistic and literary expression. Will taught his pals to be curious, compassionate, and brave by sharing his sister's stories with them. Bill kept caring for the garden, with every blossom serving as a daily reminder that even in the darkest soil, beauty may arise and that life, despite its fragility, endures. The family would also congregate in the memory garden during peaceful times when everything seemed to be quiet and the sun was setting. As though Zoey's laughter still echoed through the petals, the flowers shone in the gentle light, creating long shadows. As a reminder that love, once given, never really goes away, they experienced her presence as a live, breathing part of their hearts, rather than as its absence. The Klein family ultimately came to a profound realization. Love continued to be the light that led them forward even in the darkest storms, when the winds of loss threatened to completely uproot them. It persisted via ritual, memory, tears, and laughter, with the silent but unwavering assurance that Zoey Klein's soul would always be with them, gentle, tenacious, and eternal. It carried them through and illuminated the route forward. The garden was filled with warmth as the sun rose higher, illuminating the petals with dazzling light. Once shrouded in sorrow, the mansion now shone with fortitude. The Klein family also came to the realization that, despite being permanently altered, life still provided opportunities for beauty, connection, and hope as they clung to one another, always rooted in their love for the sister, daughter, and light they had lost but would never forget.